Lovely stuff, guys. Oscar Willis from TheMacLife.com, joined by Jose Youngs of MMA Fighting, Mike Bohn of MMA Junkie, and from the Hall of Fame, John Morgan, the unimpersonable John Morgan joins us, comes out of, the darkness to join us back here for the last ESPN card and potentially the last UFC pay-per-view of all time until the White House when they charge you $100 to watch that.
Shut up and sit down.
But John, being here at the weigh-ins, there's history made basically every week at the UFC. It feels like you can sort of find some nugget of, new history facts, especially if you're a stats nonce like Bohn, to find there. But when you actually watch Merab fight for the fourth time in a title fight this year, defending that title, it does feel like something new and unseen before. What's your take on Merab, his ability, and not just his ability, but his willingness and desire to do this 4 times this year?
It's incredible. I mean, what more would you want from fighters, right? To just be like, hey, I'll take on the top challengers. I want to compete as much as possible, and I want to, I want to be there all the time. Like, we get it, especially at the highest level, right? Like, we know how difficult it is to face the absolute best in the world and to prepare and to be there and all the stuff that comes with it, not just the fight, but the training camp, the interviews. I mean, just everything that goes along with it, right? But for somebody to be out there and saying, listen, I don't need 6 months to prepare. I don't need 3 months off. Like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to stay in it. And look how his popularity has risen. Look how his visibility has risen. That's it. This is a sport where you don't get to compete every night. You don't get to have 3 games a week like the NBA or the NHL. Like, you only get a couple of appearances. So to stay in the public spotlight the way he's doing, I love it, man. I just think this is the example, the shining example that I think other athletes should be looking to follow.
Do you think it's the most Merab thing in the world to genuinely invite his opponent to join him in a jacuzzi and then be quite upset when the opponent goes, that's kind of gay?
Merab is just special, man. I mean, he's just such a unique
Special in
individual,
what way?
man. I mean, he's just great. The personality is great. I'm so glad that people are seeing it because I think guys like us that are, at the media days and, seeing it behind the scenes and you're seeing guys, coming up, whereas the casual fan, they're only getting a chance to see the headliners, they're only watching little clips of things. We've seen that personality for so long, and I love the fact that everybody is getting to see it now because he's just the energy's infectious, right? When he's around, you can't help but smile. Like, I don't know, man. He comes out to weigh in, I can't help but laugh and smile and feel good. He's jumping around. He's the best, man. I love seeing it.
It's very Christmassy. It's like an elf. For you, Bohn, I feel like you're actually one of the ones who set this narrative of 4 title defenses for Merab early on. You saw this as a potential possibility. Do you consider this a historic moment, or do you think it's something that actually Merab could really, it's very hard to get yourself in a GOAT conversation in this sport, right? But if he was able to just keep fighting every 3 months, it's something we're missing from the champions of today. Volkanovski, Adesanya, they made their legacy doing that, but today, Ilya has that fight a lot less often. Do you think this is something Merab can carve out as a unique thing for himself?
Maybe. I mean, we'll see how he feels after this fight. It's hard for me to think he's going to be right back at it in March, then June, then October, then December again next year, but maybe if the body holds up at some point, it's probably in his best interest to do a break. But yeah, this is a history we need to appreciate very strongly. Only 8 guys have defended the title 3 times in a year. Alex Pereira did it last year. Look how high we were on him, saying this is such an incredible year. He's one-upping that. I don't know if this is going to be done again, just schedule-wise. It's so difficult. This worked out perfectly. I couldn't really ask for anything more. I don't know if the stars align like this again, but we really need to appreciate it. And the fact he was up here first on the scale to weigh in after all this.
Jumping.
Man, you can't ask for anything more. And again, everything he's done, if he does lose this fight, people are going to say, was it too much, all these different things, but he's got a trilogy fight sitting right there. So I feel like this is a no-lose situation for him rolling the dice.
And for you, Jose, it's hard, right, to stop thinking about that first fight with Petr Yan. You know what I mean? Because it was dominant. I saw on the weigh-in show that DC and Laura, they tried to say it was competitive, but actually if you think back to sitting there, man, Merab just shut him down. Now there's an argument, smaller cage versus bigger cage. We know Dana loves that argument. But I mean, when you look at the fight itself, is this a fight that's sort of tailor-made for Merab to get that 4th defense, or does Petr Yan have something out there that he can surprise us with?
I think, Merab's also shown a lot more wrinkles to his game in his last few fights. He almost knocked out Corey Sandhagen on the feet. So Merab said this is, in his words, is going to be much more technical, and because he knows Petr needs to knock him out. I don't think any of us are going to pick Petr Yan to win a decision. Right. So, but yes, I do agree with you. There is something to the fighting with one arm. I don't know how real that is, but if you how many did he stuff? He stuffed
38 out of 49.
Yeah.
38
so
out of
he
49.
stopped 38 of them, but he couldn't stop all of them. So I understand what you're asking. is this a layup? I already beat you once dominantly. Can I do it again? Probably, but the Merab we've seen because he fought O'Malley in a very close fight and then went out and submitted him. Yeah. Corey Sandhagen, one of the best strikers in MMA, almost knocked him out on the feet. Merab is usually pretty great in rematches, and he usually shows new wrinkles to his game. So I think we're going to see a totally different style of fighting.
Is there an argument, however, though, that plays against Merab? If he goes out there more comfortable on the feet, does that actually give Yan the opportunities that he didn't have in the first fight to get success?
100%. I hope he's bluffing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I don't know if Merab can bluff.
He gets 60 takedowns.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that plays into it. And again, you have to be smart about the way you fight. I mean, what Merab does is pretty unique and special, right? And the fact that he can wrestle at 100% capacity at the whole time and never stop and not worry about it. And I get that he is better on the feet and he's improving as a martial artist, but you always have to remember, don't play into your opponent's game whatsoever. You know what I mean? Petr Yan is going to get 5 chances to be on his feet at the start of every round. Don't play into that as much as possible.
Don't do the Bilal in Montreal.
That's it. You know what I mean?
The Bilal in Montreal. That's good. We'll remember that forever.
So I'd love to see him stick to wrestling. I mean, listen, you gotta say that you're going to strike, and you can't just wrestle. You got to throw a little bit, but I hope it's just to set up the grappling for his sake.
Yeah. Then we'll move on to the co-main event. I mean, this card has kind of been built around Merab, which is funny because I remember back when Dana's screaming, why the fuck is he posting videos of his own cut? You know what I mean? Yeah. He's an interesting cat, and I think it's been an interesting journey, but eventually, once you've pulled this off, you can't help but appreciate that, and I think that goes for the executives here at the UFC as well. Here at the UFC, as in the building, not here, as in the UFC. We're not that shilly. In the co-main event, then, you got Pantoja, another guy, and I think it's been common in that division, right, that they're so dominant, it's very hard to get any traction with the fans. Everyone can sort of appreciate Pantoja, but like DJ before him, perhaps not that interested in watching him necessarily. But it does feel like, especially at the reaction of the press conference, Joshua Van might be the guy to get a bit of excitement going. And I think, obviously, very young, very early in his career to have this opportunity, but should he pull it off? Does feel like there's a little bit of extra spark around him for a flyweight in that division.
Yeah, there could be for sure. Again, this is a special moment for Spider in the 2000s to challenge for a title. I mean, I know it's kind of been running to the ground. Yeah, it's kind of been running to the ground a little bit, but it is historic and it shows next generation it's here and all this kind of stuff. And it's been built great, right? Like the in-cage face-off, we don't get those too often. Immediately we knew this is the fight we're getting 6 months from now, 5 months from now, and they had a great face-off and it's been going, I think, properly. And these two guys clearly have a lot of respect. I love that Van is shutting down the narratives put out by Pantoja, old school versus new school. So yeah, this is, I mean, in 2025, about as good of a flyweight title fight as you could ask for, narrative-wise.
Yeah, and then you also on the card, you have Brandon Moreno, Tatsuro. Exactly. Sort of feels like, that division kind of stops and starts. They have the Moreno-Figueiredo quadrilogy, and now I think they're sort of waiting for that next rivalry to draw people in. I think that's what helps dominant champions sort of shine, is when they have a rival, and maybe Joshua Van could be that. Outside of those two fights, I think the one I'm most looking forward to is Cejudo versus Talbot. I feel like, we talked about Merab having a bit of a weird journey. Henry Cejudo might be the weirdest journey I've ever seen, but definitely he's sort of reached a point now where he's more self-aware than I think I've ever seen him. Yeah. When he makes jokes like Dana will just cut me and stuff like that, it's funny. It's also true, but it's very funny. When you look at that fight, obviously, you're number one in Peyton Talbot's fan club, I think. Probably. So when you're there and you guys are looking into each other's eyes on your interviews every 5 weeks.
Similar to the, your little Qatar.
Yeah, we're down. I mean, it's almost the perfect week. But when you look at that fight, is it the passing of the torch that the UFC quite clearly want it to be, or is it more like they gave Peyton quite a tough matchup to help him get that next step?
I actually think it's kind of a little bit of both, because we've seen Peyton be great, but we've seen him stumble in LA against a high-level wrestler. So this is like, if he loses to Henry, who's on his way out, Henry, 2-division champ, Olympic gold medalist, I don't think it hurts him that much, because that's about as many accolades as you can get. But if you beat Henry, all of a sudden you have this future contender, and you're 1-2 wins away from fighting possibly Merab or Petr Yan. Merab's already talking about paying Talbot if he beats Henry, I could fight him. So I think this is a litmus test to see where Peyton is, because if he does lose, like I said, it's not going to hurt him that much, I think.
Do you think it won't, though? Because I feel like Henry doesn't have a lot of respect with his accolades for the fans.
Maybe.
And I feel like
I think it would hurt at the moment, but in retrospect, you look a year or two down the line, man, remember that one loss, but it was to the Hall of Famer, Henry
Correct.
Cejudo. But
He won't get in the Hall of Fame, dude. They won't put him in.
Come on.
Yeah. He deserves to be.
Yeah.
He deserves to be. But
But it's funny, to your point, I was tweeting our good friend Simon Head earlier this week, and I feel like this matchmaking, like, it was a Tuesday, and they were in the war room, and Triple H walked in, and it was like, you know what I mean? Like, this is WWE matchmaking. Like, you got to pass the torch, my man.
Peyton said that a bunch of bantamweights just said no to him.
Right.
Like, that's what he said at media day. That's what he said in interviews. He's like, they ran down the list, and they were like, no, and Henry was the only one that said yes.
Gotta respect it, right?
100%.
Gotta respect it from Henry Cejudo, because he didn't have to take, like, this
way.
win does absolutely nothing for Henry Cejudo's legacy.
No.
Like,
Yeah,
if
true.
he's to get it, you know what I mean? So to be willing to go out there and do it again, we talked about shining examples of people, and again, I know a lot of people don't like Henry Cejudo and the king of cringe and all that, but you gotta respect him for taking this matchup and saying, look, I'll put my reputation on the line against this young gun.
I think Henry's reaching that stage, and a lot of these guys do, where, like, I always think back to Michael Bisping, where, like, for his whole career, it's like, he's an arsehole, and then by the end of his career, he's like, but he's our arsehole, you know what I mean? I think Henry's kind of crossed that. And actually, I really enjoy Henry
Great
now.
point.
Now that he's sort of, like, maybe trying a little less, he's had, a couple of kids, he feels a bit more, like, down to earth. I really enjoy listening to Henry, and he has a great mind for the business.
Great media day.
And I
Great media day.
do feel bad that there's a little bit of a disconnect there after he retired in COVID and all the rest of it. Outside of that, we have Anthony Smith's lookalike Bogdan versus, I mean, he must love hearing that by now. That fucking joke's so overdone. Even at the press conference, they kept shouting Anthony Smith. I was like, mate, we get it.
He's just nodding along.
He's like, yeah, we get it. And then you've obviously got Jan Blachowicz. Weird one for Jan, right? He said he can't afford to lose this one. And Jan's a funny one because despite he's, not a great little record he's got right now on this run, he's not lost like massively decisively. Do you know what I mean? Like the Oldberg fight in London was whatever.
Yeah.
I always think back to Pereira in Salt Lake City, like could have easily won that one. You know what I mean?
Closest fight Poetan's had.
So what's on the line here?
I mean, I think just kind of proving you can still hang around. Similar narratives in all three of these main card fights outside of the title fights. A former champion against someone younger coming up, kind of a prove-it fight. Maybe Brandon Moreno is the least of the bunch in that sense. But for these two, Henry Cejudo and Jan Blachowicz, definitely. I mean, Jan, I think he's the oldest fighter in the UFC right now, if not like top three.
them,
So
yeah.
he's among them. So he's got to show what's up and that he can still be a guy. I mean, despite the losses, he's still hanging on to a pretty high ranking at light heavyweight, which is, I guess, the upside of this weight class there. So it'd only take a few to be right back there, but if he loses this one, it feels like it's okay, like what's the goal and the objective of the rest of your career?
Yeah, and then, okay, so the card itself is what the card is. The big other story outside of this is technically meant to be the end of pay-per-view for the UFC, which has been quite, in my opinion, the time to do it. It's too easy to illegally stream. I certainly don't do that, but people
Not if you
do.
live in Canada. Still $80 baby for the next couple years.
But it's just culturally, like, it's just changed. I think pay-per-view used to be a thing where you'd all gather around, and now it's like, we're getting ripped off here. For you, John, what are your memories and what do you think this ESPN deal did for the UFC? What do you think the change of pay-per-view does for the sport? And what are you expecting from the new deal in Paramount with the Trump administration well in hand?
Listen, being with ESPN, I think, was a massive move for the UFC. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, the ESPN brand is still very powerful. I know there's discussions about, they're losing subscribers and this and that. I get it. But being associated with that brand is massive. And how about the fact that anytime you turned on ESPN, there was that little ad right down at the bottom, right, for the upcoming week. Here's the fight that's coming on. So I think that was massive. I think being associated with the ESPN brand was huge. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a big risk. I figured for sure. I know there was talks about Netflix, Apple, all these things, but I was like, I bet they'll figure out a way to stay with ESPN. It just matters. To go to Paramount to get the kind of money they did, massive, right? But it's a little bit scary because now you got to take the sport somewhere else. But getting rid of pay-per-view, that's huge, man, because you talk to so many people. Obviously, we live in this bubble and we're buying and we get it, whatever. But you talk to so many people outside of the bubble that are like, I love the sport, but like, I love watching fights, but not enough to pay $75. And I get that, right? So now you watch the prelims and you're cool and you like it, but you don't watch the title fights. You don't watch the biggest stars in the sport. Well, now you're going to get to tune in and watch that. So I honestly believe this is a massive opportunity for the UFC to kind of ramp up that growth again here in the United States. Still growing internationally, of course, still a big sport, but it feels like it kind of plateaued a little bit. I think this is an opportunity to bring in a lot of new people here in the United States that weren't big enough fans to pay $75, but are still happy to tune in and watch some great fights on a Saturday night.
Yeah, and I think as well, they've sort of hinted at this CBS showings, which I'm not sure when they're going to pull the trigger on that. But if that happens, I mean, obviously I'm from the UK. I don't have a fucking clue. He's from Canada. I don't even know if they have TV there. What would it do for CBS to have a fight on CBS? How big is that?
Network television is huge anytime. I mean, now listen, it depends on
Because
what
MMA
they pick.
historically has been so seamless with CBS. I know, right?
Ladies and gentlemen,
Sometimes
these things happen in
Sometimes,
MMA, right?
sometimes there's a crazy fight because mayhem just shows. Literally, mayhem shows up.
What a full circle moment to be back on CBS.
Exactly.
Can we get more Ronaldo back and maybe get a little Gus Johnson in there just for one night, not to get rid of the crew. But no, I think it's big. Anytime it's on network television, I think what'll be interesting to see. And I think Paramount is very much invested in this because if it's one of those things where it's like, an ABC show, but it's at noon in the afternoon, like that's not as big of a deal. But if you're on network television in prime time, it's a big deal. And listen, man, maybe it's silly to you guys or whatever, but like to me, like seeing Dana White make fight announcements on a Thanksgiving NFL game,
50 million.
that's a big deal to me, man. I thought that was a cool moment. So it feels like, look, Paramount put $7.7 billion into this, right? So I don't think this is going to be a deal where like, yeah, you're on our network, but buddy, kind of stay to the side. You're those weird fight people. No, they're going to be pushing the UFC front and center. So I think it's a big deal.
For you, the change in sport, obviously you mentioned Canada needs to pay for it still. You're
Sure.
so clearly bitter about that.
No.
You mentioned it 6 times this week.
Makes
But you'll be there anyway, so you don't have to pay. But in terms of what you think this does for the sport, and in terms of your memories of the ESPN era, which we'll obviously all look back on as like a massive, like you say, growth for the sport, your memories and your takeaway of the change.
Yeah, no, I remember when John and I were covering the first ESPN event in Brooklyn with Henry Cejudo, coincidentally enough.
way.
So here we go.
Oh, yeah,
he was on
when
the
he
first
beat
and the last,
Digital,
I guess,
right?
for
Do you remember that
still one
time
more
we were
next
actually
week.
backstage and I asked Alakinta real estate advice? Do you remember that?
Remember that? I forgot about
Yes,
that.
but I mean, of course, a lot of big events, a lot of monumental stuff has happened during this frame. I don't think you could say this has moved the sport backwards by any sense, but a new opportunity with this, a new opportunity for growth. And as John said there, I mean, being a fan of the UFC is among the most expensive for any sport. That's not even including going to the events. That's just sitting at home and watching everything, your subscriptions, your pay-per-views. So you're cutting that down by like 80% in terms of what you have to pay. So that's just massive for people who want to get in the door.
I was thinking about this the other day. Like, obviously, the NFL is king here in the United States, right? Everybody tunes in, everybody watches. It's part of the culture. What if you had to pay $50 every Sunday to watch it?
Yeah.
Would it be what it is?
No.
You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't think so.
It's a doorstop, right? It's a door that you have to go through and people don't want to pay.
So it'll just be a question of, I mean, of course, a lot of opportunity. We're seeing these first 2 cards. There's questions around the matchmaking, who's getting title shots. My biggest thing is, what's that going to be a year or 2 years in? Are we going to continue to grind away at the meritocracy of the sport for priority of entertainment? That'll be a big question. I think that will impact whether this is a big growth period or how it all goes.
Look, you can't argue the title shots that they give were not earned. They weren't earned. Right?
But we know why, it's entertainment.
But entertainment, right?
They want to start strong. They don't want a 5-round grinder for their first things. So, but that's.
Fuck, nor do I.
I think we could all understand that for the first events. My question is, how long does that go on?
And for you, Jose, the same thing about the sports change away from pay-per-view. Do you think they'll bring it back at some point? I don't know how much Paramount want to make money on this deal. I feel like they're aware it's a bit of a loss earner, but they're paying for content. But do you think we'll see pay-per-view back? How would that be received? And what do you think this does to the boxing promoters out there who are remaining on pay-per-view and DAZN still every fucking thing's on pay-per-view? What does it do to them when you can offer this for much less?
I feel like in this TKO era, they're trying a lot of new things that are kind of going to set the groundwork moving forward. Kind of like when the WWE announced the network and Dana was like, oh, that's crazy. And now we have Fight Pass and now they're on streaming service. So it's kind of that route. I bet they've got to do like a handful of pay-per-views, right? Because just that model is just so ingrained in fight culture. Maybe 1 or 2 for we joke about the White House card, but if they're going to do a pay-per-view, it's going to be that. Like they're going to want.
That's what I think.
That's got to be network television, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dana said that's.
Can you imagine, like, if I don't even want to look at your face. Let's say Conor does come back for that fight, and he does want to. You don't think they're going to try and just make a fucking shit ton of money on that? And then obviously if then John comes back, again, John's a massive, those are the last 2 pay-per-view guys they have. Do you think they go willingly trade it for CBS, or do you think they go, fuck, let's make the money while we can?
Is that what they paid the money for? The $7.7 billion is to have that on, it's not so they can get UFC Apex events on there for $11 a month subscription. It's so they can do that, and that's what I would hope would grow the sport, right? So I hope it's on there, and I hope it's not.
I get it. It would be tempting, but I think that's a great point. It would be tempting, right? Because you know that people are going to tune in. It would be tempting to get it, but I agree with what Mike is saying. Is that look, that's what they paid. They paid you $7 billion, and that was always that argument, right? He was like, well, what do we put on pay-per-view? What do we put on ABC? What do we put on ESPN? What do we put on ESPN Plus? It's like, no. I paid you a lot of money. I want everybody. I want everything you got on my platform right there.
Yeah. I mean, who's the biggest fighter that they put on like an ESPN card over the course of this 7-year run?
Pereira?
And no, but like for free, like not an ESPN Plus
Right.
pay-per-view, like a free TV card. If you can we don't know what that's capable of. Putting a Conor McGregor, a John Jones, Islam on TV, having it so much more accessible. We don't know where that can
And it
take
made
things.
sense for ESPN because they were participating in the pay-per-view, right? Like they were business partners. But now it's like, look, we're Paramount, we don't care. And talk about like Paramount, like I struggle to see how they make their money back on this, but it has instantly changed the reputation, right? Like when you talked about streaming services, you never talked about Paramount Plus. I mean, maybe you talked about a show or two, but you didn't say like, oh, they're a candidate to get this, or now they're a player. In any discussion with any property, you got to be like, you got your Netflix, you got your Apple, you got your Paramount Plus. So it instantly changed it.
Yeah. Interesting times in the sport. I feel like, as you said, there may be a bit of a plateau, and even if, who knows how Paramount are going to present the sport, how they're going to produce the sport, but in terms of just the fact it's off pay-per-view, I wonder how many doors that opens for new fans or old fans who have gone away and want to come back. It's been very unattainable. Like I think it's cost thousands of dollars to be a fan of this sport over the last few years. Very interesting times. Thanks for joining us.
It's on.
Brilliant. Oh yeah, there's another press conference later on. You'll love it.